It was one offhand comment, but for so many fans, it hit like a truck. Kody Brown, standing there with his usual cocky grin, once looked straight into the camera and said that when he first saw Robyn, she looked like a diesel jeans model. And for those who've watched Sister Wives from the beginning, that single moment felt like a shift in the ground beneath the family's feet. Suddenly, this wasn't about spiritual unions or shared values. It wasn't about partnership. It was about image, about fantasy, about Kody chasing something that felt more like validation than love. And from that moment forward, nothing in the Brown family was ever truly the same. Hi, friends. I'm Olivia, and this is TLC's Sister Wives Secrets. If you've been following this roller coaster of a family as long as I have, then you already know that things didn't fall apart overnight. But looking back now, it's clear there were moments, small at first, almost too easy to miss, that whispered the truth long before the yelling began. Make sure you're subscribed for all the honest commentary and real breakdowns that don't sugarcoat what we've seen on screen. And drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear from you guys because some of these episodes are still hard to watch even years later. So let's be real here. For years, the Brown family worked overtime to present a picture of unity. 4 wives, 1 husband, 18 children, 1 home. That was the image. A group of adults who chose plural marriage for faith, for love, for community. And while it wasn't perfect, because it never is, it worked, at least on the surface. The wives didn't always agree. Kody wasn't always present. But there was effort. There was some kind of balance. And then there was Robyn. When Robyn joined the family in season 1, the dynamic visibly shifted. At first, it looked like excitement. Kody was giddy, nervous, downright obsessed. That fluttery new relationship energy is understandable. But it never faded. In fact, the deeper he fell into his relationship with Robyn, the more he started to emotionally retreat from the rest of the family. Robyn wasn't just the new wife. She became the favorite. And not just in the way the other wives suspected. It played out on screen over the years, painfully obvious to anyone watching. Kody's comments about Robyn being the hottest wife, the loyal one, the one who always had his back, were layered with meaning. But that diesel jeans comment? That was the giveaway. It wasn't spiritual connection he was chasing. It was ego. It was a kind of trophy. And while Kody chased that image, the foundation of his plural family quietly started to rot. Because when you idealize one person and reduce everyone else to background noise, resentment isn't just natural, it's guaranteed. Kody may have said he loved all his wives, but how he showed that love told an entirely different story. And the rest of them? They felt it. Every single day. As the seasons rolled on, the cracks that had once been whispers turned into visible, aching gaps in the Brown family. And you didn't have to look hard to find them. Kody wasn't even trying to hide the fact that Robyn was the center of his world anymore. And the worst part? The other wives could see it, feel it, and were expected to stay quiet about it. Janelle, who had always been practical and independent, started to sound tired, emotionally drained. You could see it in her face during confessionals, in episodes like the one where she talked about sleeping in an RV alone, while Kody stayed warm and comfortable at Robyn's house. It wasn't just about the trailer or the lack of space, it was about being left out, being unseen. Kody barely visited. He showed no urgency. And every time Janelle expressed her feelings, he deflected or minimized them. And then there was Mary, the woman who was with Kody from the very beginning. Their relationship had already taken hits, especially after the catfishing scandal, but instead of healing, Kody emotionally locked the door and walked away. In multiple episodes, he flat out said there was no longer a romantic relationship between them, that he didn't feel safe being with her. But he continued to keep her around like a figurehead wife, someone to sit on the family bench but never be allowed back in the game. And still, Mary clung to the hope that maybe Kody would come back to her, that maybe things would shift. But they never did. And Christine? Christine had always fought the hardest to make the family work, especially for the sake of the children. but you could actually see the light leaving her eyes over time. There was that heartbreaking moment when she revealed that Cody told her he was no longer interested in an intimate marriage with her. Not just emotionally, but physically. She said he wouldn't even touch her, and for Christine, that was the breaking point. Because you can't say you're married to someone and then deny them love, closeness, and warmth. That's not marriage, that's abandonment. Meanwhile, Robyn was always the good wife, the obedient one, as Cody called her. He praised her for being loyal, for not questioning his authority, and he used that loyalty as a weapon, measuring the others against it. If they pushed back, they were labeled as difficult. If they expressed pain, they were disobedient. And so, Robyn got the time. The trips, the attention, the protection, while the rest slowly faded into the background of Cody's increasingly narrow world. There was a time when the Brown family's greatest pride wasn't just their plural marriage, it was their togetherness. The kids grew up in this big, busy home, running between houses, knowing they had siblings everywhere and four moms who loved them. It wasn't traditional, but it worked for a while. But when Robyn entered the picture, and especially after COVID hit, everything they had built started falling apart. Not with one big explosion, but with quiet exits, fractured holidays, and kids wondering why their dad didn't come around anymore. The show used to show these big, chaotic family holidays, Thanksgiving dinners with mountains of food, laughter, and all the kids crammed into one house. But by the later seasons, those gatherings became stiff, awkward, or completely non existent. Cody's rules during COVID were the tipping point. He drew this strict line. If you weren't following his protocols, you weren't allowed to see him, which in theory sounded like caution. But in practice, it meant one thing. Robyn's household, once again, was the only one getting full access to him. And the kids noticed. Big time. Remember the episode when Gabriel cried, talking about his birthday? He said he tried to tell Cody he was sick, tried to connect with his dad. And Cody just moved on, more worried about who had been where than about his son's feelings. That moment, it hit like a punch. Because you could see this boy wasn't just frustrated, he was hurt. Abandoned. Christine had finally had enough. After being told intimacy was off the table, after her opinions were constantly dismissed, she packed up and left. And not just for herself, but for her children. Because what kind of example would she be setting if she stayed in a marriage where she was constantly told no, but expected to keep giving yes? When she walked away, it was powerful. She reclaimed her voice. And her kids backed her, especially Isabel, who had already felt neglected when Cody didn't travel for her back surgery. Mary, on the other hand, stayed. Or rather, was left lingering. Cody made it clear there was no future with her, emotionally or physically. But she held on for years, hoping, praying that maybe the old Cody would come back. And Janelle? She didn't leave right away either. Not because she didn't see the writing on the wall, but because she was still thinking of the kids, still trying to hold on to that dream of unity, even as it crumbled around her. But the family they were once so proud of, it just didn't exist anymore. Not really. Janelle was always the rock. Not flashy, not loud, not dramatic, just steady. While the other relationships in the Brown family surged and crashed with emotion, Janelle was the one who held things down. She was the practical one, the backbone, the one who focused on raising strong, kind kids. And yet, even she couldn't escape the cracks that formed when Cody started changing. Her boys, especially Garrison and Gabriel, used to have a tight bond with their dad. Cody would roughhouse with them, give fatherly advice, show up. But as time went on, and especially once Robyn's kids took center stage, Janelle's boys started to feel like they were in the shadows. Cody's attention narrowed, and his priorities shifted hard toward Robyn's household. And Garrison? He didn't take that lightly. He was vocal, emotional, and devastated by the sudden distance. There were scenes where Janelle went toe-to-toe with Cody, defending her sons. She made it clear. They weren't just disrespectful, they were hurt. They were reacting to a father who stopped calling, stopped showing up, and made it feel like love was conditional. And Cody, instead of owning that pain, called it disobedience. It was infuriating to watch. Janelle stood alone more and more, caught between a crumbling marriage and children who were emotionally bleeding. And then came the unthinkable. Garrison's passing shook the entire fan base. It was a tragedy so deep, so raw, that no words could ever fully explain it. But what makes it even more heartbreaking is how it tied back to this emotional breakdown within the family. Garrison had been open about feeling pushed out, about feeling unwanted by his own father. He moved out, tried to create distance for his own peace, but the wound never fully closed. And Janelle, she was left to pick up the pieces alone. There was no Cody to hold her while she cried, no shared grief, no united front. Just Janelle, grieving as a mother, a protector, a woman who gave everything and still ended up abandoned. She had to mourn her son while watching the man who should have been there retreat further into the only relationship he still prioritized. But somehow, through all of it, Janelle found this quiet strength. She didn't crumble. She didn't lash out. She stood up again, not just for herself, but for the memory of her son, for the family she tried so hard to protect, for a future where her voice finally mattered. In the quiet aftermath of all the chaos, there was Janelle. Not broken, but changed. She wasn't the same woman who once held the glue of a plural family together. She had been tested, stretched thin, and brought to her knees by grief, betrayal, and years of being emotionally sidelined. But slowly, with no dramatic declarations, Janelle started finding herself again. It didn't come all at once. There was no big aha moment, no single episode where she just stood up and walked away. It came in small, almost imperceptible shifts. A smile on her face while gardening, laughing freely with her daughters, taking control of her finances, making plans that didn't revolve around Cody. Those little sparks of joy, of autonomy, of peace, those were Janelle's quiet revolution. While the world watched Cody spiral deeper into his own confusion, clinging tighter to Robyn as everything else slipped through his fingers, Janelle chose something else. She chose herself. And it wasn't out of pride. It wasn't vengeance. It was survival. Cody's world now? It's smaller. Where once he thrived off the energy of a bustling household full of wives and children, now there's silence. Just him, Robyn, and the ghosts of what used to be. His own words, once loud and confident, now feel defensive and bitter. There's no joy behind his eyes, only explanations, excuses. His version of the story, shaped by pain and stubbornness. But the camera doesn't lie, and what it shows is a man who had it all and didn't realize it until it was gone. Christine, meanwhile, bloomed in her own way. She found happiness outside of Cody, a new love, a new sense of self-worth. Mary, too, stepped into a world where she's no longer defined by rejection. But it's Janelle's transformation that cuts deepest. Because she never wanted out. She never stopped trying. And yet she was still left to weather the storm alone. She didn't rebuild her life with a bang. She's rebuilding it with quiet dignity. You can see it in the way she speaks now. There's sorrow, yes, but there's also strength. And clarity. Janelle's story isn't about revenge or rebellion. It's about rediscovering purpose in the aftermath of abandonment. What happens when the promise of equality breaks down? When one person's love becomes a trophy for another's ego? You get a family that no longer feels like a family. You get children who feel forgotten, wives who feel erased, and years of unity undone by favoritism masquerading as affection. And the final haunting question that lingers, one that Janelle, Christine, Mary, and even the kids have had to confront, is this. Can any love truly survive when it stops being shared? That's the legacy of this story. Not just of sister wives, but of what happens when one person becomes the sun and everyone else is forced to orbit or burn out. If this story hit home for you, make sure to subscribe, hit that like button, and share your thoughts in the comments. Because sometimes the quietest voices tell the most powerful truths.